what is your response, or when people say, hey, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be obsolete? You kind of touched on it a little bit with either you jump on this train and adopt it, or you get left behind.
60% of all job categories that exist today did not exist prior to World War II. That one fact tells you that we are going to invent a whole bunch of new kinds of jobs. In the end, we wind up with a much wealthier, much healthier, much better society.
Welcome to Future Driven. I'm Adam Lejeune-Kopp, and on this podcast, we talk about challenges and wins in business. See the vision, drive the future. Welcome to Future Driven episode number 50, Armando. I'm really excited to have Armando Viteri from Neubloc. He's the CEO of a generative AI strategic consulting company. And Armando has already given me a big breakdown off camera, but I'm really excited to introduce you to him and everything that he's got going on in the AI space. So Armando, thanks so much for jumping on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you were giving me a quick debrief on everything AI, and I wanted to start a little bit before we get into what's happening today. Give us a little bit of your background and how you've been building your career and what you've been up to leading up to Neubloc.
Sure. So MIT computer science by academic background. I was part of that first wave of AI. So I was a Lisp programmer back in the days of thinking machines, Lisp machine, etc. This was the symbolic AI era. And I've seen the various waves of AI, the hype and the fall over various cycles. I'm a partner in a boutique private equity group, and my CTO is a well-respected Ph.D. in AI. He's a well-respected technologist in that area. And starting about 6 years ago, he approached the partnership and said, we've seen lots of these different hype waves for AI. This one is fundamentally different. This one's going to change everything. We need to start investing. So this is starting about 6-7 years ago, certainly before any of the hype was around, even before the word generative AI was around. He was recognizing that these new neural net models that eventually led into transformers, which led into large language models, that would wind up being a path for AI that was going to bear fundamental fruit. And that's certainly turned out to be the case. In fact, if anything, it's happening a lot faster than we would have originally predicted it would happen.
Yeah. So, and on that note, it is coming really fast in the last 12 months or so. But what you're talking about is the last 6 or 7 years. You feel like the progression over the last 6-7 years has been a lot faster than what you originally thought back then?
It went exponential, right? Yeah. Because we went from neural net to deep learning to GANs to transformers to large language models. There was a sequence of AI technologies that happened over that 6-7 year period that wind up finally the kind of one of the crowning achievements are these large language models and generative AI. The problem with that, and part of it was the invention. I think the core inventions were all in place starting about arguably 4 or 5 years ago. However, then you actually had to train these massive models, and that's taken a long time and tens of millions of dollars of investment by a handful of companies, which has now resulted in a set of large language models that are either in the market today in the form of like GPT-4, which powers ChatGPT,
yep,
or just recently introduced, such as Bard from Google, or about to be introduced. So there'll be probably on the order of half a dozen, maybe more core large language models that get developed, and then dozens of derivatives that'll then in turn be applied into thousands of different applications, including business process applications.
So when we think about large language AI, which is what you called it, right? So
large language models. Yes.
Large language models. So when I type into ChatGPT, give me a white paper on topic, right? And then that spits that out. And I know this is already happening in some case, but at what point does that then translate to visuals of, give me images, give me video thumbnails, create videos? Like, I know that's
happening right now.
That's already happening, but how does the large language and everything right now feels a bit disconnected? And I feel like as things get more mature, they're going to become even more connected. How do you see that translating for all of these different components?
Well, you have, you're right. At this point, kind of GPT-4 has been focused on language only, language in, language back out, right? You have other companies such as Stability AI that has been focused more on the media side of things. And they've created large language models around media. So they've, instead of going and prowling the entire internet for language, for text, they've been prowling the entire art domain, for example, and coming up with a language model, a generative AI for being able to produce images. So if any of you haven't played with Stable Diffusion yet, you should. It's really fun to play with, but it is it's a tip of the iceberg. Because an interesting data point, back to your point about producing videos and the like, Stability AI just hit a major benchmark just in the last month or two, where they're now able to produce images at a rate of video quality rate, so greater than 30 frames per second video quality. So now all of a sudden that opens up the ability to be able to do real-time video based off of some kind of prompt, a script, whatever you want to define. So these technologies are developing all in parallel.
Yeah,
you're right. It's disconnected because there's you have the core language, large language models. You have the core media models. They'll wind up kind of merging together in one form or another. But then you have on top of that, literally hundreds of AI startups that are using these as generative AI cores and then going after specific applications, be it in manufacturing or marketing and healthcare, and applications by the hundreds, by the thousands.
So recently, Elon Musk and some other tech leaders asked the AI world to take a pause on development. Yes. What's your thoughts on that? And is anybody actually going to listen to
that? Number one, nobody's really going to listen to that. I think this is an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
Number two, I don't agree with the mechanics. I don't know what that 6-month moratorium really accomplishes, other than giving competing large language models built in other countries an opportunity to be able to catch up, which they're way behind, right?
You're saying
Fortunately, their focus has been on things like surveillance.
Yeah.
The nature of those countries. However, I don't think so. The 6-month moratorium doesn't accomplish it, but the spirit behind it is correct, which is to say, this is advancing faster than society and regulations are keeping up with it. Using even a simple example of that is in the area of DeviantArt, is a popular website in which artists post a lot of their images. Well, DeviantArt wound up adding a subscription service using generative AI, so I can ask DeviantArt to go generate images for me in the style of a living artist. Well, should that living artist be paid for that? Because that's really derivative IP. Well, under current regulation, arguably, that's within the boundaries of fair use. So that's just one example of a million examples of the regulations, the laws that need to be put in place, the safeguards. My own son is a Ph.D. candidate at Stanford, and his entire focus from the time he's been in high school was around AI safety. because he is very concerned that we need to put in some, not just regulatory, but some technological guardrails around the technology and how it gets used.
So tell us a little bit about Neubloc and, if you can, some projects that you're working on and how that factors into the landscape of AI we just spoke about.
Sure. So we wound up, my partner, who's well-respected CTO in AI, Ph.D. in AI, he encouraged the partnership to go invest in this wave of AI starting about 6-7 years ago as neural nets were developing, deep learning, et cetera. And so we did. So we were very early to the party as a strategic consulting and implementation firm. We were early to the party. So since then, we've done probably as many or more implementations of real life implementations of AI in various businesses, everything from kind of global 1,000 companies all the way down to young startups. And so typically the opportunity here is that, in fact, backing up a step, the problem here is that AI is so fundamental that it's going to change arguably every business. Maybe you can make an argument that the corner donut shop doesn't get affected by it. But other than those corner cases, it affects every business. And those businesses that integrate AI early into the core, into the fabric of the company, will wind up not just surviving, but thriving competitively. Those that don't do it at great risk. So as a result, our core business is going into companies. And in some cases, although very large companies, all they really know is how to spell AI. And they need a guiding hand to be able to look at where the pain points of the corporation are, be able to analyze what the priorities are, how much it would cost to implement AI, to be able to resolve that issue, what is the ROI associated with it, and then have a roadmap of implementation to be able to start integrating AI over a period of time, deeper and deeper into the core fabric of the corporation to keep them competitive. So that's what we do, is we consult with these companies, both large and small companies, to be able to do that kind of integration of AI, an AI tool set into what they do every day.
Well, that's great, and obviously very important as we go into this landscape of unknown a bit with AI and the growth and the speed that's happening. So what is your response, or when people say, hey, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be obsolete? You kind of touched on it a little bit, where either you jump on this train and adopt it, or you get left behind. What's your methodology when organizations are concerned about either workforce or their actual service or product being eliminated because of this?
Well, the only way that this generation of industrial change is different from prior waves is the speed at which it's happening. So I would agree that it's happening faster. But if you look at the first industrial revolution, steam, and the amount of societal displacement it caused, it was enormous. Number two was introduction of electricity. That displacement was even more enormous. It turned us into an industrial society from an agrarian one. So in terms of societal displacement, it was about as fundamental as it got. Third wave, our introduction of IT and the invention of the PC, the internet, et cetera, once again, caused enormous displacement. In this particular case, an interesting fact for you, 60% of all jobs by number of people did not exist prior to World War II. So for each of these waves of technologies that have occurred, now we're in our fourth one, in each case, a whole new set of jobs were created and a whole new wave of opportunities for people to be that much more productive. Certainly, if I were to compare my father's generation to my generation in terms of productivity, what I can actually do as an individual, pretty easy to argue it's at least an order of magnitude better.
Yeah.
My children are probably 2 orders of magnitude better than me.
Sure.
So this idea, where we focus on this idea of yes, I agree that we need to have some guardrails around the issues of AI safety and societal displacement and all the rest. If we flip that upside down on its head and come back to the idea of we are inventing a whole new class of human. We're inventing an augmented human, somebody that's capable of what would have taken hundreds of people to accomplish. You can individually, in terms of productivity and creativity, an individual can actually accomplish this. Think about the unlocking of invention, creation that we can do. So problems that seemed intractable just one generation ago become easy to do with actually relatively small teams. Look at what happened with Google's DeepMind. One of the intractable problems in medicine has been protein folding. You have whatever the number is, I'm not going to get it right. Let's say 100,000 possible proteins out there. And there's a very small number of people that could actually figure out how to do the protein fold on a molecule. Well, what they did at the time, they were so desperate to find solutions for this that it was put out open source. Anybody could try on the internet, go try and fold their own. And there was actually an administrative assistant somewhere in rural UK that became the world's best protein folder for whatever visualization skills she had. But you can imagine the slowness of this process. Well, yeah. DeepMind was able, in an algorithm, they were able to do it in hours.
Yeah.
Now think about just that one alone. How many millions of people will benefit? Billions of people will benefit. The hundreds, if not thousands, of pharmaceuticals that will be brought to the market, et cetera. So we're entering a completely different era of invention.
So I agree.
Era but also on the creativity side, we're unlocking artists' ability to be able to generate, produce things that they could have only imagined producing a generation before.
So I totally agree with all that, and I feel like there might be a bit, and curious to hear your stance on this, a bit of concern of so much generation is going to happen, so much quantity is going to be generated. It's going to be so automatic. And when I think about digital marketing and developing websites and social ads and things like that, what is your thought on because AI feels very high quality, even in this early stage, right? Like there's a lot of great quality stuff that's coming out, but is it that we're going to hit a point of quantity takes over the quality and it's almost going to feel obsolete or cancel each other out because there's just so much going on that you don't know what is kind of happening? What's your thoughts on that?
I love that question. So once again, my model for how to think about this is the augmented human. So we've never had an augmented human, not at this level, ever before. So, but at the end of the day, you do need a human pilot for all this technology. So as much as I want to create the next great ad, using a marketing example, as much as I want to go create the next great ad, at the end of the day, I have to have a human being that's driving that AI, directing it, cajoling it, getting it in the right direction to actually produce a piece that's of quality. So the AI is not the inventor. We are still the inventors. It is an augment to my ability. Now, of course, I can research things in a matter of minutes, what would have taken me days of research to be able to come up with the next great invention, or the next great ad, or the next whatever, right? So it's improved my productivity and therefore my inventiveness, because I'm able to try so many more things. I can brainstorm in a completely different way. I have a newly found partner.
Yeah. I like that. And what you kind of touched on earlier, one person, which might have taken a job of 5 over the course of a couple of days, can now do it individually. And so then you're really empowering that human to have more skill sets at their fingertips, more higher quality. I guess I just come back to that consumption. The consumption is already so fast and so vast right now that it's just going to increase that, and society will have to find a balance between what is, the quantity over the quality.
No, I agree. I think there is, just like if you were standing on the precipice of the beginning of the PC revolution. I'm old enough that I saw the PC wave come in. I was one of the early employees of Sun Microsystems, which was one of the kind of seminal companies in bringing in the personal workstation concept, right? If you stood at the precipice of that, you would never in a million years have predicted exactly how it would have developed. Or on the precipice of the internet. Once again, I'm old enough to have seen that come in during my lifetime. So I don't know that we can predict exactly how this is going to evolve, but I keep coming back to the idea that 60% of all job categories that exist today did not exist prior to World War II. That one fact tells you that we are going to invent a whole bunch of new kinds of jobs,
right,
that are going to be doing all kinds of things that were unexpected. Certainly, I think it's pretty safe to predict that the jobs that are high tedium jobs will largely evolve or disappear, right? Because the tedium can be done by my assistant, my augment, right?
Yeah.
But that frees me up in other ways. So yeah, I think it is. I think within the boundaries of AI safety, which once again I've agreed on that point.
Yep.
Within those boundaries, I think that we're entering into an incredible new era of unlocking both unlocking creativity, unlocking productivity, unlocking global wealth, and creating a whole new different life for us. But we need to be conscious of both the regulatory, legal, and technological boundaries that we need to place on the technology to make it be long-term viable toward the most positive outcome for society.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And we talked about the last 5 or 6 years. If we think about the next decade between 23 and 33, I mean, how fast do you see this happening? And like, how much progress are we going to make over the next 10 years?
Wow. My son, Ph.D. candidate in AI at Stanford, and I were having exactly this argument last night. It wound up being a much longer. The conversation outlasted the battery on my phone.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
So I think this the integration of AI into the fabric of society is happening quicker than the prior 3 revolutions happened: steam, electric, and IT. So I think where IT really changed the world, it took it a 20-year span. I think this one's going to take those businesses that integrate generative AI into their fabric, they flourish. The ones that ignore it or late adopters, again, they don't quite make it. So what the composition is of the global landscape of businesses, types of businesses, how they perform, et cetera, all of that stuff changes in a matter of years, single-digit years.
Yeah, that's great. And it's really great to hear your insight and the way how you're taking it back to steam, electric, IT. I mean, these are big pivotal moments in human mankind, and you're really putting AI up there with such a monumental change and shift that we all really need to understand and pay attention to.
But yeah, every time someone starts talking about kind of what is the societal impact, how we change as a society, every time people point out that concern, once again, you look at the prior waves and, oh my God, does society go through some changes? In the end, we wound up with a much wealthier, much healthier, much better society as a result of those changes, despite the displacements that happened. So if you were that farmer that now is deciding to go work in a factory, whose son eventually wound up in an office job or starting the next great startup, that wave of generational change could never have been predicted. But that guy that started that in that cool new startup, right, lives a very different life from that farmer generations before that was working a subsistence level farming plot somewhere in the middle of Nebraska.
Yeah, no, it's a great analogy. So last question, Armando, literally or figuratively, what will you be driving in the future?
So the auto industry is going through as much change as any industry. Essentially, what I will be driving is a sophisticated AI computer that happens to have some way of pushing four wheels. The value is not in that platform, whether or not it's a sports car that's shaped this way or an SUV that's shaped that way. At the end of the day, there are nuanced differences. The value will be entirely contained in the software infrastructure that exists on the actual platform itself, the car itself. But in addition to that, its connectedness to the global cloud.
And in all reality, this vehicle or this software will be driving you wherever you want it to go. So
that's taking longer than anybody was predicting.
Wherever you tell it to go or instruct it is what it'll do for you, how you want it, what do you want it to look like, and what do you want it to say.
Well, that's only the beginning of the vision. Transport can go in general. There's the self-driving part. The interconnected stuff makes it even more so. Makes it even more fundamental with change, because now you can, using the same infrastructure you have, you can handle far more traffic and handle far more cars. You have much better ability to be able to integrate mass transit systems as a result as well. So all kinds of things change in a sequence of steps. But I'll be the first to say that as I've always been on the side of the movement toward AGI has been something that we've been talking about since back in the days when I had hair, and it still hasn't happened, right? That's been a tough problem. It actually, as it turns out, it was far easier to be able to get a large language model to pass the bar with the law bar with flying colors than it was to get a car to drive itself. Who'd have thought that was the tougher problem?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Armando, thanks so much for coming on. Great episode for being number 50 milestone, and really appreciate your time and all your knowledge on everything AI. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for inviting me.